The story of Amtek Auto began like many others in a newly liberalized India. It was a story of ambition, a story of relentless growth. Arvindam and his family built an empire from scratch, starting in 1985. They saw the coming boom in India's automotive sector. They knew that for every car that rolled off an assembly line, hundreds of components were needed. This was their opportunity. The company grew at a blistering pace, supplying critical parts like connecting rods, crankshafts, and flywheels. This was not just organic growth. Amtek Auto was hungry. It went on an acquisition spree, both at home and abroad. It bought companies in Germany, Italy, and the United Kingdom. The goal was to become a global giant, a one-stop shop for automotive components. Each acquisition added to its size, its revenue, and its prestige. The stock market loved the story. No one was asking the hard questions yet. No one was looking too closely at the mountain of debt that was financing this global dream. It was a story of scale, and scale was all that mattered. The shiny exterior of a global auto component giant was beginning to crack, revealing a foundation built on borrowed money and questionable decisions. The first signs of trouble appeared around 2015. The music suddenly stopped. Amtek Auto, the darling of the markets, defaulted on its bond payments. A sum of rupees 800 crore was due, and the company simply did not have the money. This was a shock to the system. How could a company so large, so integral to the auto industry, fail to meet its obligations? The default sent ripples of panic through the financial world. It was the first crack in the dam, and soon the floodgates would open. The company's share price plummeted, wiping out investor wealth overnight. The story of unstoppable growth was now a story of sudden, shocking failure. The default revealed the true state of Amtek's finances. The company was sitting on a staggering debt pile of over rupees 26,000 crore. This was money owed to a consortium of more than 24 banks. In 2017, the Reserve Bank of India cracked the whip. It identified 12 large corporate accounts that were responsible for a quarter of the country's bad loans. Amtek Auto was on that list. This infamous group came to be known as the Dirty Dozen. They were the first to be pushed into insolvency under India's new bankruptcy law, the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. The message from the regulators was clear. The era of promoters defaulting on loans and getting away with it was over. Amtek was now a test case for a new and untested legal framework. The inclusion in the Dirty Dozen was a mark of shame. It signaled the complete collapse of the company's credibility. From being a celebrated industrial giant, Amtek Auto was now a poster child for corporate malfeasance and financial distress. The insolvency process was meant to be a swift and efficient solution. The idea was to find a new owner who could revive the company and pay off its debts. The first glimmer of hope came in the form of Liberty House, a UK-based metals group led by Sanjeev Gupta. In 2018, Liberty House put in a bid of around rupees 4,000 crore to acquire Amtek Auto. The lenders, desperate for any recovery, approved the plan. It seemed like a resolution was finally in sight. The headline celebrated the successful rescue of one of the Dirty Dozen. It was supposed to be a victory for the new bankruptcy law, but the victory was short-lived. The deal turned into a farce. Liberty House, after winning the bid and getting the court's approval, simply failed to pay. Months turned into a year, and the promised money never arrived. The savior turned out to be a phantom. The lenders were left high and dry, back at square one. The entire process had been a colossal waste of time. This failure exposed a critical weakness in the insolvency system. What happens when the winning bidder just walks away? With the Liberty House deal dead, the lenders were forced to restart the entire process. This time, an American hedge fund, Deccan Value Investors, emerged as the frontrunner. In 2020, DVI submitted a resolution plan. It was a much lower offer, promising the banks a recovery of just over rupees 2,700 crore. This represented a massive haircut for the lenders, who were owed over 10 times that amount. But with no other options on the table, the Committee of Creditors reluctantly approved DVI's plan. The story of Amtek Auto's resolution is a story of legal battles. It is a journey through the labyrinthine corridors of India's courts. From the National Company Law Tribunal, or NCLT, to the Supreme Court, The case was fought tooth and nail. The promoters, led by Arvind Dam, used every legal loophole available to them to stall the process. They challenged the insolvency proceedings, they challenged the eligibility of bidders, and they challenged the approval of resolution plans. Their strategy seemed to be to delay the process for as long as possible, hoping to either wear down the creditors or find a way to regain control of their fallen empire. For the banks, this was a nightmare. They were the ones who had lost the most money. They had lent thousands of crores to Amtek Auto, and now they were facing the prospect of recovering only a tiny fraction of it. The DVI plan, for instance, meant they would have to write off over 90% of their loans. This is what is known as a haircut in financial jargon. In this case, it was more like a complete decapitation. The lenders were caught between a rock and a hard place. Rejecting the low offers meant liquidating the company, which would fetch them even less. Accepting the offers meant sanctioning a massive loss. The legal delays had a devastating effect on the value of Amtek Auto. As the court battles dragged on, the company's assets deteriorated. Its machinery grew old, its factories fell into disrepair, and its key employees left. A company that was once a vibrant manufacturing powerhouse was being hollowed out. The very purpose of the IBC, to preserve the value of a distressed company and ensure a quick resolution, was being defeated. As the insolvency process floundered, investigative agencies stepped in. The Enforcement Directorate, or ED, India's premier agency for fighting financial crime, launched a probe into Amtek Auto. They were looking for evidence of fraud and money laundering. What they uncovered was a web of deceit. The ED alleged that the promoters had siphoned off huge amounts of money from the company. Bank loans, meant for business operations and expansion, were allegedly diverted to shell companies, used for personal gains, and invested in real estate and foreign assets. The company was allegedly being systematically looted from the inside. The allegations were shocking. The ED claimed that the promoters had created a network of over 100 shell companies to launder the loan money. They had allegedly inflated the company's profits and assets to secure more loans from the banks. It was a classic case of corporate fraud on a grand scale. In 2024, the ED took decisive action. It conducted raids on multiple premises linked to the Dam family and their associates. It seized assets worth hundreds of crores, including luxury properties in Delhi and Gurugram, and froze bank accounts. The investigation revealed that the business failure was not just a failure, it was a deliberate, well-planned scam. The promoters, however, continued to maintain their innocence. They claimed that the company's downfall was due to a downturn in the automotive industry and the failure of their overseas acquisitions. But the evidence gathered by the ED painted a very different picture. It showed a pattern of deliberate deception, where the company's funds were treated as a personal piggy bank by its owners. The case highlighted how promoters could misuse the trust of banks and investors, enriching themselves while driving a massive enterprise into the ground. The Amtek Auto saga serves as a powerful cautionary tale. It exposes the deep-rooted problems within India's corporate and financial systems. It shows how easily loans can be obtained and then siphoned off. It demonstrates how legal processes can be manipulated to delay justice. And it reveals the immense challenge that banks and regulators face in recovering public money from willful defaulters. While the IBC was a step in the right direction, the Amtek case proves that the fight against financial crime requires much more than just a new law. It requires vigilant regulators, diligent banks, and a zero-tolerance approach to fraud, ensuring that those who break the system are not just named and shamed, but are brought to justice.